Shalom Aleichem, my dear brothers and sisters. Recently, Israel has won the Eurovision contest, which is a singing contest among the European countries, I believe, and I would like to comment on that. I know that a lot of people were happy and all that, but to me this seems like a public desecration of God's name, and I believe that as Jews we should be ashamed of this. And I'll tell you why. Because according to the Jewish law, a Jewish woman is not allowed to sing in front of men, and men are not allowed to listen to a woman sing. And therefore, when Jews do something like this, where they publicly violate God's law, I think this is what's called a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. And this shows like an affront to God's law, as if we don't care about what God tells us, as long as the world likes it, and as long as the world approves. And I believe that this is something that does Israel harm, in the eyes of the nations, and especially in the eyes of God. And some things that happen in Israel are actually Kiddush Hashem, where God's name is sanctified. Some things, like for example, as Jews we're supposed to be a light unto the nations, meaning we're supposed to spread morality unto the nations. We're not supposed to spread darkness unto the nations, but morality and monotheism. So a few years ago, for example, there was a case where some organization in Israel wanted to send some kids overseas because they were sick with cancer, and they wanted them, to just send them on a little vacation. And this was in Israel a few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. And in the airport, one of the girls lost her passport, and so she was left behind, and the airplane started already moving, and was already driving to the place where it's gonna lift off. And then suddenly she found her passport, and she went up to the counter and said that she found her passport. And the person at the counter contacted somehow the authorities of the airport, and the authorities contacted the pilot, and the airplane turned around to pick up that girl. This was the first time in history where an airplane actually turned around for a single passenger. And so this to me was a Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name. The pilot and the airport, what they were willing to do for this Jewish girl. Change things around, coordination and all that. So this is something what I call sanctifying God's name. But when Jews do something that goes clearly against the Jewish law, this is called desecration of God's name. And I hope that the Jews realize this, and not only that, by the way, not only the whole problem is not only just singing in front of men. There is a question whether Jews are allowed to listen to music at all. As we know from the Talmud, that the rabbis made a decree after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. The rabbis made a decree that Jews should not listen to music. There is such a decree. And so I'm not sure if this is a current law that everyone, but certainly it certainly is a question, whether Jews are allowed to listen to music or not. And I know that some rabbis, like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, for example, he wouldn't listen to music at all, unless it's for like a mitzvah purpose, maybe like a wedding or something like that. So this is another issue. So I don't think this is something as Jews we should be proud of, that this contest was won by an Israel. And not only that, one thing that somebody mentioned that next year they would be doing this in Jerusalem, and I think this is going to be another desecration of God's name, a contest like this in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a holy city. It is a city where both of our temples stood, and to do something like this in our holy city, where there's going to be promiscuity, and where there's going to be drinking, and where there's going to be intermingling between men and women, and singing and all that, I think this is going to be, God forbid, may this never happen, but if it does happen, I think this is going to be another desecration of God's name. Thank you for watching.